Hello everybody. Today we're going to be continuing our series on PowerShell for security professionals. We're going to be talking about the help subsystem inside of PowerShell. This is what is going to actually allow us to get help information on the commandlets, how we can use those commandlets, information about some modules. We're also going to be getting information about how to actually use many of the internal features of Microsoft. Microsoft has really put quite a bit of effort into this documentation. In fact, the documentation, like right now, a lot of the documentation for other Microsoft products is now being made open source in GitHub by Microsoft, allowing people to contribute. Before we start, one of the first things we have to make sure of is that we have the latest help information. So on a screen where we're running as administrator, we're going to type update help. This will download the latest version of the help information straight from Microsoft. In PowerShell version 2, all of this information actually came packaged with PowerShell, and you were not able to update this information. As of PowerShell version 3, Microsoft actually made it updatable. PowerShell ships without any help information, and you actually have to run update help to be able to download the latest information from Microsoft itself. This will also work with third-party modules that make their information available. Right now, as you can see on screen, I got an error here that it was not able to get help information for Windows Update Provider. That's normal. Microsoft currently doesn't have help information for all modules that come with Windows. And as Microsoft and members of the community add this information, it becomes available to be updated via this command. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this command, I can only run it every 24 hours. If I actually want to force an update in less than 24 hours, I can actually type the command force to do that. But actually, this information doesn't get updated that often. Probably once a week, somebody does a pull request and information gets added. So there's not that much of a need to actually do this. One thing that we can now do is that we can now use the get help command to get additional information about commandlets. So we can actually do get help, and we can do it on itself. Get help. And here we have the basic help information on the get help command. Now, one of the things that we're going to see is that we're going to be getting, hey, this help information is for the get help command. It has a synopsis that says, hey, display information about Windows PowerShell commands and its concepts. And we're going to see what are multiple parameter groups or parameter sets, as it's called inside of PowerShell. This is different combinations of parameters that I can actually use to call this commandlet itself. Each one of these parameter sets will actually have some parameters are not in another, or they may behave in a different manner depending on the parameter that I specify. When somebody writes a script or writes a module or writes a function, when you set inside of each one of those functions your default parameter set, that is going to be the initial one. The way that we can read this is anything that we see here between square brackets means that this is an optional. We don't have to specify that parameter itself. We can actually probably specify only the value. Also, it is telling me what is the type of value that it is expecting for that parameter. Here we can see that the parameter name takes a string. So whatever I give this parameter has to be a string, a collection of characters. Also, we see some others that are actually value sets. Value sets are, you can only specify this group of parameters, either one or more. In this case, we can either specify alias, commandlet, provider, general, FAQ, glossary, and many others here. And we can only specify this ones. As we can see, the parameter itself is not optional. I actually have to specify dash category and then specify the value. In the name one, we can see that it is between square brackets. That means that I can actually omit just saying name, and I'm going to be able to use what is called positional parameters. I'll cover that in a bit more. Here we can see some other examples where you can see functionality, and I have a string, and then I have the square brackets here. This means that this is an array. This is a list. So I can specify the functionality parameter here just by comma separated value string, and it's actually going to use that. So multiple words just separated by a comma, and it's going to grab that as its parameters. Or I can just specify an array variable and just put multiple strings in it and pass that variable into the parameter itself. So this is the way that we read it. Square brackets, everything's optional. The minus and plus sign, we're going to be looking here that it is actually the type that we're passing, and also between parentheses here, we're going to be looking at value sets, a collection of values that I can actually pass, and it won't take any other than those specified there. So if we keep going down, we're going to see that it actually provides a description of the commandlet itself, and also it provides related links. Now these links are for more information that I can actually request and look at. So online version, this is the online version of the help. Updatable help status table is a table with all of the information there that I can get on what has been updated, not updated. It has what is called about underscore command underscore syntax. This is contextual help. This is actual more detailed documentation, not tied to either a function or a commandlet, that I can actually request and look at. And also has some remarks on other ways that I can run this commandlet. For example, one of my favorites is actually to do dash examples. And this will actually provide me examples on how I can actually run this commandlet. So I don't have to kind of discover by trial and error to see how stuff works. So here we have an example, get help, ls detailed, and this is going to give me detailed information about this command. I can do get help format table full. This will give me all of the information on all of the parameters, the help and examples and everything on this commandlet itself. I can get the examples only like I just did, or I can even get help information for one specific parameter if I wanted to. So one thing I can actually do here as an example is I can do get help parameter, and we're going to get the information for the name parameter. Now here's the information for that specific parameter. I can see that actually it's taking a string as its value. It provides me a full description of what that value is. But one of the things that we have to really take notice on is on this table down here. Is it required? Yes, no. So this means if the parameter is actually mandatory. Another one's the position. When you see a position parameter, this means that I can actually skip providing the dash name, and whatever is on position 0, the first value provided, that's going to be mapped to that specific parameter. It's actually also telling me default value, none. Accept pipeline input, true by property name. We'll cover this a bit more in another video where I'm going to be talking about objects and piping objects into one another. It tells me this is accept wildcard characters. It says no. So one of the things that is happening here is that when you look at this example, I did get help. I never provided the name. So what it's doing is just grabbing this get help string that I gave it here, and it's being mapped into the name. So in actuality, this is equals to this. The only thing is that it actually saved me some typing. So that way I can actually just not be as verbose in the command line to get what I wanted. So another area that we can actually look is if we go here and we go full, we can get the information on all of the parameters plus examples. As you can see here, you can see the syntax for the different groups and how I can actually use this. We can see what are the outputs, what are the inputs of the command, some of the common parameters, and here you can see each one of the parameters and their information. Now, all of this help information when we're dealing with commandlets, as I mentioned in my previous video, commandlets are actually compiled .NET code. It's in a format called MAML. MAML is actually an XML format. So let's do something. Let's go here into my GitHub. We see here a folder called ENUS. This is the MAML help information for when your system's actually running on a system set up for the English language. You can actually specify multiple languages. So here I have this help information for my module. If I go here and I just look at the information, let's say for the binary module for the DLL that contains the commandlets. We're going to be able to see here all of that MAML help information that I mentioned. And all of this information is completely structured. Now, when you want, this is painful to actually write by hand. I've actually done it for the initial version of this module. And then I got smart and the PowerShell team released a project called PlatEPS that actually just grabs all of the information from the commandlets, turns all of this into Markdown, and I just edit that Markdown, and I then convert that Markdown into MAML format. Now, we can also use what is called comment help or comment-based help. So if I go here and I look at the main source of my module, I have some commandlets here that are actually comment-based help. And here you can see it where I actually specify synopsis, a description, and I can actually provide examples. Now, PowerShell is smart enough that when I create these functions and I tell them to behave like a commandlet, it is going to parse all of this information, and this information is going to get populated into the help subsystem. So here you can see I have two parameters here, one called session, another index. As you can see, I actually specify both to be in different parameter sets, and both have the position of 0. So they are the first parameter that you can actually pass, and you can actually skip that parameter. The parameter is mandatory. This means that you actually have to provide either a value or specified this parameter. You can see that I actually set a default parameter set. So this is going to be the first parameter set that you're going to see. And this is the one that the system is going to assume that you're providing that value to. And you can see the rest of the information here, like the type and the name of the parameter, as we can see it here in the help. So we can see if it is required, that is that variable there is all true or false. So actually PowerShell self-documents, which at least for me, it is awesome. This means that it saves me a ton of time not having to write a function. Let's say you were doing it in Python or Ruby, you would actually write this small chunk of code, a function, or you would write, for example, a very large multi-line string that would get output anytime somebody specified the help parameter on your specific script. In the case of PowerShell, we don't have to do that. In the case of PowerShell, it self-documents a lot of that information. The only thing I have to provide is some additional information, as you can see here in the examples, the description, the synopsis. Probably I can add output or input. So when you're working on your own code, my recommendation is to use Visual Studio Code. And one of the things that you can actually do is just use that PowerShell extension that Microsoft wrote for generating the comment help. So let's create a new file. And let's save it as a PowerShell script. Test.ps1. And as I design my functions, let's call cmdlet here. Let's use the template. For a cmdlet, I can actually just go over here and do comment help. And it will add already a template of the help information for me. So all of my functions are documented the way that they should. Now, other tips here for in the case of PowerShell is one of the things I can actually do is I can do, let's say, help, which is an alias for get help. I can do help get, let's say, get process. I can do dash show window, and it will open a small window here for me that actually allows me to search inside of the help information. I can just put name here and it will highlight that for me. I can just go from one instance to the other of that word inside of all of the help information. I can even go here into settings and I can specify which section of the help data I want, so I can see that. So this becomes actually super useful for you just to have on the side as you're working on stuff, just to have this window on the side so you can look at that help information of the command. My favorite is just doing this. I just go remove this one. I'll only leave the examples. Now that I have the examples, I can just use the window snipping feature, snapping feature that I can snap and just split the window here. And I can just copy paste examples, modify them as I need. And this really saves me quite a bit of time as I'm working with PowerShell. Another thing that you can actually do if you want the latest version of the help information is you can just do get help and then do online. And it will open your browser and it will navigate to that page for the commandlet if the commandlet actually defines any help URI. So you can actually just read this in a web browser if you want. It is formatted in a nicer manner with a bit of syntax highlighting. So you can choose and pick exactly what you want to do. Now, where I really find all of this stuff really helpful, specifically when I'm traveling to customer sites that don't allow me to connect to the internet, or I'm traveling and I'm on an airplane and I don't have access to the internet. I don't want to spend $10-15 to get in-flight internet just so I can get some information that I can actually just pull from my own system. So what Microsoft does, they provide what is called contextual help. Contextual help is super useful. It is all of the about underscore subject. Let's do get help about underscore and then an asterisk here. I'll be able to pull all what is called all contextual help. Now, all of this contextual help. It's information internally to how PowerShell actually works. So here I can see information about WMI. So if I want to learn about how PowerShell works with WMI, I can actually do help about underscore WMI. And here I have information about WMI itself, how WMI works. I have help information here on how to get different classes, how to get different instances of specific classes, how to look into different namespaces if I want. Let's say I want to know about functions. I can do get help, and I can just put the word functions. Nope, let's take that S away. There's a Q there. Get help function. And it says, hey, so I look through all of the help information. I'll look inside of the title. I look inside of the description, and this is the information I was able to find on functions. Now, the way the get help command works is that it's going to first look at the title. And if it doesn't find anything containing that word in the title, it's then going to look inside of the context or the content of each one of the help files and pull that information. So I can actually just do here help about underscore functions. I can learn about how to write my own functions inside of PowerShell. It's going to give me even best practices, and also going to give me links to other places I can look at for information. It's going to even give me some of Microsoft's own best practices, and then at the end it's going to give me see also, which is where I can even get more information, so I can look about parameters as I pass that information inside of functions. It's going to tell me about script block. It's going to tell me about scopes. I can actually just look at advanced functions, advanced methods, advanced parameters. I can just keep digging in and digging in into more data that is going to be useful for me. And I don't have to look for this data anywhere in the internet. I don't need a network connection to get all of this. All of this information is going just to be there for me, available in my machine after I updated it only once. Let's say that we are in an environment where we're not able to connect to the internet to download the latest help information. Either there's a security policy that prevents us to connect freely to the internet, and everything has to be managed from a centralized location. One of the things that we can actually do is we can save the help information into, let's say, a USB drive, and then we can use the update help commandlet to update from that location. The commandlet that we use to save all of the help information is save help, but before that we need to make a folder. So we can, let's say, make directory, and we're going to call it offline help, and then we're going to do save help, destination path, C, tap complete, and let's call it offline help. Let me do verbose so I can see update information. It's just downloading the data. It's connecting, it's resolving the URIs, it's downloading all of that help information for me into that folder. If I look inside of that folder, we're going to see all of that help information for each one of the different modules as being saved as a cap, plus an XML document with the metadata information for each one of those. So now we have finished downloading all of the information. The same module that failed the last time when we did our first update help failed here. So now we have all of this information in the folder as I showed you. Now I can do update help source path offline help. I can do dash verbose, and I can update my help information straight from that folder. Now my system has been updated. Now, to recap, right now we covered the get help commandlet. We covered how to actually download help information from the internet, and also how to update our local help system information. We covered different parameter sets, how they are actually defined. I showed you how you guys can look at the examples, how you can read the information about each one of the different parameters, so you can learn more on how to use that specific commandlet or function itself. We covered the contextual help, so you guys are able to get even more information about PowerShell, and you have to use Google foo, Stack Overflow foo, or anything like that. You have quite a large amount of information that Microsoft already provides to you inside of help. So you have to go out there in the internet to pull that data. And we covered how is that help actually structured and defined, either in code or in the case of commandlets and binary commandlets. It is actually using MAML. We can use MAML to specify multiple languages, and it's updatable. And then we have the comment help base that we can actually use that for our own functions, our own scripts, and we can use that to document them and make that help information also available through the help command to be able to read and understand how to properly use that tool that we developed. Well, I hope that you guys have found this section useful. Do remember to click subscribe and the bell to be notified of new videos. And as always, thank you for your time, and I hope you liked it.